Alright, so in this video we're gonna make this example here of some cool shockwaves with a gradient for the color. We're gonna animate some forces. We have our character here. Again, we're also gonna use the blend shape that we haven't used before, so lots to learn. So I'll be using this standing 2H magic attack 02. Just make sure you drag the overdrive almost all the way down so that it's much slower, and this will give us more time for the shockwave to take place. So same as in the previous video, we can right click, import, and I'm gonna import that character, and you can move the character to the side, and I'm gonna scale it up 300%. We're also gonna need a much bigger simulation grid. So simulation, I'm gonna set the Z to be just 80, the Y to 600, and the X to 400, apply new resolution. And now we can just move our character to the edge, actually this edge because of the way she's rotated. And let's make her white again, so albedo white. And I just want to create a box that's filled with smoke. So this is similar to what we did in the previous video. First we need to turn off the fuel and turn off the temperature and go into the simulation force and set the buoyancy to 0 and enable solid ground. Next, we're gonna need a shape primitive. So right click, shape primitive, set it to box. We can remove this one and just plug it into our emitter. Go to visuals, make sure show emitter is enabled. Reset the simulation, and here's our box. Let's make it 1.5 meters on the Z, and then just extend it on the X and Y to cover the entire simulation area. But actually what I want to do is I want to do a blend shape. So we can just right click, shapes, blend, and I want to blend it with some noise. So I'm going to do again right click, shape, noise, and so the noise will be our shape B and the shape A will be our box, and then this entire shape blend will go into our emitter. And so now our shape A, which is the box, is getting cut out by the noise, which is shape B. So you can play with the scale of the noise to clearly see how this works. This is a very handy setup that you can use for something like dust coming off the ground, sand blowing over sand dunes randomly to emit smoke in random places. So I'm actually gonna set the size scale to be maybe just 1.5. So we have just a little bit of randomization in the shape. And the smoke is still moving because we have our noise here. So I'll just delete the noise. Okay, cool. So now the smoke is just staying in place. So we can go into our emitter, visuals, hide the emitter. So all we see is the smoke on the ground. And we're gonna need more smoke to make this cool. So emission, and I'll set the smoke rate to 65. That's what I originally did. Our character seems to finish his magic spell around frame 85. So that's when our shockwave force will happen. So we can just hit L to enable our looping. And I'll just set the loop to be right at the end of the character animation. And so now we just need to add a force to create the shockwave. So from my simulation node, I'll just drag out a line force. And let's rotate it 180 on the Y so that the arrow is pointing down. And I'm gonna rotate it just slightly on the x-axis so that it's pointing slightly away from the character. So maybe something like this, and just move it right where the character is. And I'm actually gonna set the push strength really high. So I did 50 for that. Then I did 0.1 for twist, 5 for repel strength. So right now what's happening is the force is affecting the entire simulation grid, but we wanted to create just this sort of impact point. So we need to enable the fall off and set it to linear. And now we're gonna get this tube, and this tube indicates where the force is active. So now we're getting this nice shockwave, but it just keeps pushing continuously. So we need to animate it on the frame 85. So I'll just animate the force activity. So just enable the keyframes for that. Go to frame 85, we want it to be basically just enabled for one frame. So I'll just make 3 points. The first one will be disabled. And again, you can hold Control and scroll to zoom onto your timeline, and then Shift scroll to move on it. So it's gonna be disabled on this keyframe, then it's gonna be enabled on the middle one, and then again disabled on the last one. And I just want to make sure that it's around frame 85 when it's enabled. So just move these keyframes over, reset, boom, and the simulation loops. Boom, he pushes out the smoke again. And because we're emitting smoke continuously, there's new smoke being created as soon as the old smoke is pushed away. So you get this pretty awesome loopable shockwave simulation. I think that the force could be even stronger. So all we have to do is just increase the push strength to maybe 60 and the repel strength to maybe 8. And maybe we can give it more twist, so 0.2, just to make it a bit more interesting. Reset, and here we go. So now we can just play with the colors. So under shading, smoke coloring, I want to set that to be a exposed color gradient. And we can again drag from the smoke color pin and make a color gradient. And I just want it to be a gradient that goes from blue to white. So change the black one to be pure white. And then in the beginning, it can be like a pure blue. Then a few frames later, it can be like a lighter blue like this, very saturated. And then you can just drag this white color closer to create the contrast. As you can see what's going on here, as I'm sort of extending the gradient, and reset the simulation. And boom, here we go. So at this point, I would encourage you to start combining what you've learned in the previous videos and see how you can experiment and make some of your own cool stuff. So maybe we can add some verticals like we learned in the previous video. So I can just drag from the forces and add some verticals to add more interest into the smoke. Now I have these nice swirls going on. We can maybe increase their amount to 100 and increase their push velocity, reset the sim, and we're getting some nice little magical smoke swirls here. So pretty simple effect, but pretty cool. Mainly just wanted to show you the blend shape and animating the force to be enabled and disabled, some smoke coloring, and I'll see you in the next video for more.